In this chapter, we will talk about objects and some of its properties, the JavaScript object notation, popularly known as JSON, array implementation in JavaScript, and some properties and functions that work on arrays. This chapter and the following ones should be quite interesting to people who come from a C or C-type language background. So let's start. JavaScript provides a general object data type, which is basically an unordered collection of properties. And each property has a name and value. The property names are strings, and values associated with a property may be anything. It could be a primitive type of value or another object. Alright? Let's understand with the help of an example. Open the console window in your browser and type in var car is equal to open curly brace. Then we write the name of a property, say color, then a colon, and now we need to write the value for the color. So let it be red, which is a string. So we need to wrap it with single or double quotes. And then we close the brace. Alright? And that's our JavaScript object. Note a couple of things. As said earlier, property names are just strings. So color is a string or sequence of characters. And there is no need to put it in double quotes, alright? Because it's a name of a property of an object, so JavaScript knows that it is a string. But if you want, you can go ahead and put the property name within quotes, but it's not required. The value of this property, which is a string, however, must be put within quotes, because JavaScript wouldn't know the data type of a value otherwise, because the value can be anything. So we can't write red without the quotes, alright? And what if we have more properties in an object? Say a car has a color and the name of the model. Well, that's quite easy. We just put multiple property value pairs separated by commas like this. So a property and value is separated by a colon, and each of the pairs is separated Let's talk about how to get property values from an object or how to set their values. And from the previous lecture, you should have an idea already. So again, let's declare a new variable. Let's call it a circle and initialize it to an empty object. And now let's add a property named radius using the dot notation and initialize it to a value of 4, say. You have already seen this kind of stuff. Also, if you want to read the value of this property, you just use it like this. We can read and write properties of an object in JavaScript as an associative array as well. For example, let's create an object named book. And now we can add a property named title as if the string title was some kind of an index of an array, like so. And we can initialize this property to some value. Similarly, we can also read the property using the same syntax. And whichever way we write the property, it's basically one and the same thing, alright? So it's just a book object with a title property. Now that we know how to get and set properties in a JavaScript object, let's see how to delete a property from an object. It's very simple. We just use the delete keyword. So we can say delete book.title. And now let's evaluate the book object. And as you can see, the title property from this object is gone. Alright. Now, deleting properties is not a very common use case for typical web development. So let's leave it here. Let's look at another thing. How to iterate over the properties of an object. Let's declare a new variable called book and assign this object to it. And the object contains a title, say A Tale of Two Cities, and author. So the author of this book is Charles Dickens. Okay. Well, author should ideally be an array because there can be more than one authors for a book. But for ease, let's keep it a single string because right now we don't know much about arrays in JavaScript. Now to iterate over each of these properties of the book object, we use what is called as the for in loop. And the way it works is we say for, then within brackets we can say var p in book, then open and close curly braces, You must have heard about the JavaScript Object Notation, or JSON for short, which is a very popular form of representing data as a string, especially for cases when you want to send the data from the server to the browser, back and forth. So just like data can be represented as XML, it may also be represented as JSON. In this lecture, we will see how the JSON format makes it easier to read data if you are using JavaScript. Well, JSON data in the string format is written very similar to the way objects in JavaScript are written. Alright, so let's write the book data as a JSON string and store it in a variable named book as string. Because this is a string, we will put it within single quotes. And we will not use double quotes here because inside the string we need to use double quotes. You will see what I mean, just bear a little. By the way, there is a website jsonlint.com which provides us with a way to validate our JSON strings. I use it all the time to validate the JSON before using it in my program, just to ensure that I have the correct JSON data to avoid errors later. So let's type in our JSON here on JSONlint. So it's an object, so we need to put the properties within open and close braces. Now each property inside a JSON object must be put within double quotes, alright? And the reason is that JSON is not really a JavaScript object. It is like a JavaScript object. You may think of JSON more as a string, just like XML, which is another data format. It's just that we write the JSON string in such a way that it resembles a JavaScript object. And there is a good reason to do that, alright? Another point is that in the JSON format, single quotes are not allowed for object properties, alright? Although they are strings, but we can only use double quotes. Let me add the title property first. Then after the colon, value of the property is a tale of two cities, alright? And let's validate. And this is a valid JSON string. Now if we use a single quote for these strings and try to validate the JSON, it will give an error. So when writing a JSON string, always use double quotes for strings. Let's add another property, author. Now let's validate this JSON string again. And of course it's a valid JSON. Let's add price of the book, which is a number. So the value, which is numeric, need not be written as a string. That is, JSON allows numeric values to be written directly, like shown here. But again, each property name must be quoted with double quotes. Of course, there are more details to the JSON format which we will not cover in this tutorial, but you will get enough familiarity once you understand JavaScript objects. The beauty of representing your data in this format is this. Let's first store it in a JavaScript variable as a string, alright? And because the string itself contains double quotes, let's put this whole string within single quotes. Otherwise, we will need to escape the double quotes within the string. Alright. So now this variable book as a string contains a string in the JSON format. So can we access the properties within this string directly? That is, can we say book as a string dot title? Well, no. That's not defined, right? Because this variable contains just a string. But the beauty of this thing is that we can say where book is equal to json.parse and pass this function the JSON string. So json.parse method takes a JSON string and returns a JavaScript object. Alright, and now let's see what this JavaScript object is. Well, it's the same book object, similar to what we created in the string. So in one single step, we can convert this string data to a JavaScript object, which is very useful. Now you can access the properties of this object as a regular JavaScript object. If you have worked with XML data in Java, you may know that parsing XML data to create Java objects is a big enough deal. You have to marshal and unmarshal from one form to another using some framework, maybe making use of XSDs or whatever. But here it's so simple and straightforward, which also makes it elegant. And this is the reason why JSON has become so popular, because in most web applications, we get the data from the server, parse it in JavaScript, if you were doing it the Ajax way, and then manipulate your DOM tree in the browser. So if the data is in the JSON format, things become much simpler. In many programming languages which have support for dictionaries, it may be quite easy to spit out a JSON response from your web server in a statement or two. Alright? So that makes life easy for us. Similarly, from a JavaScript object, we can generate JSON string. But we will look at that in another lecture. In this lecture, we will understand how JavaScript links functions, variables, and other programming constructs together. After all, JavaScript is not compiled, and it doesn't have a concept of a linker. So keeping things simple, JavaScript has this global object, which ties everything together. In the browser environment, this global object is the window object. So when a new page loads up in the browser, the JavaScript interpreter starts, which creates a new global object, which is named window. And inside this object, it puts properties like undefined, nan, or global functions like parseInt, has own property, or constructor functions and other objects, which are a part of the JavaScript library. Alright? Now don't worry about it if it feels like jargon. Let it unfold slowly. Let's open up a console window and type in global. And this gives us the window object representing the browser's window. We can also refer to it as window. They are both one and the same thing. We can also check that by equating global and window. And of course, they are equal. You can think of it like this. JavaScript interpreter always has a global object. But in case of a browser, that global object is called the window object. But if the JavaScript interpreter is running in context of some other application, let's say server-side app like Node.js, then there still will be some global object, but it will not be the window object. It would be something else. Alright? So can you see the difference? JavaScript language by design has a notion of a global object. Alright? So as I said, that the window object in the browser is that global object which helps tie things together. So when we create a variable or a function, it actually becomes a part of this window object. Alright? And this point is very important to understand. I have seen people put in bugs in their JavaScript program because of a lack of understanding of this idea. Let's write a function ABC which actually does nothing. I just want to show you where does JavaScript put this function definition. So now if we say global dot and start typing ABC, the function ABC appears here. So this function is a part of the global object. Now let's see if there is anything named XYZ in the global object. And there is none. So let's create a variable called XYZ and assign a value of 4 to it. Again, if you see, the global object now contains the variable XYZ. Alternatively, you can see the function and the variable created in the window object as well. Because as said earlier, the window object is the same as the global object in context of the browser. Alright? Let's start with arrays now. Arrays in JavaScript are slightly different than what you may be used to if you are familiar with other programming languages like C or Java. If you recall from how an array is defined in other programming languages, an array is basically a data structure or a container object that can hold a fixed number of elements of the same type. It means that in an array, we can only have a fixed number of items, which we have to specify at the time of creating the array. And once we do that, the number of items that we can have in the array cannot change. So these statements would be incorrect in the Java programming language. Also, each element of the array is at an adjacent memory location. That is, the memory layout of an array is contiguous. Alright. But in the JavaScript world, things are a little different. So let's see how we create and use arrays in JavaScript, and what could be a few pitfalls if we try to use arrays in the traditional way as in other programming languages. Let's declare a variable, call it myArray, and initialize it to an empty array, just like this. Open and close square brackets. Alright. Now this is an array literal, which is an empty array. If you recall, in other languages like Java, once we initialize an array, we cannot change the number of elements. But right now, myArray points to an array of 0 length. But we can easily add the first element in the array by saying myArray and use the array index of 0 for the first element within square brackets. And let's initialize it to the string 0 in English. Alright. So now the size of the array has increased from 0 to 1 because there is one element in it now. So the first difference here is that we need not specify the size of the array when creating it. The array can grow dynamically as and when we add elements. Alright. Another difference from traditional arrays is that the type of the elements need not be the same. So the first element that we added to our array was a string, right? We can add the next element as a Boolean type. So let's say myArray1 is equal to true. Alright. And then let's add the next element as a number. So we say myArray2 is equal to the number 4. Alright. Let's see what the array looks like now. So let's type in the variable name, and the REPL interpreter evaluates the array and prints it out. Cool. So these are some important things that you should know about arrays in JavaScript. But wait, there are some more differences, which we will see in the next lecture. There is one very interesting thing about arrays in JavaScript, which you would not have seen in other programming languages. Right now, in our array variable, we have 3 elements with indices 0, 1 and 2. Okay. And we have not set any element at the 10th index, say. In Java, if this was our array and we try to access the element at index 10 or try to set an element at index 10, what do you think would happen? We get an array index out of bounds exception, right? And that is because the size of the array is fixed. But if we do that here, JavaScript will happily set an element at the 10th index without populating the other slots in between. This is perfectly legal in JavaScript. Alright. Let's see how our array looks like now. As you can see, there are 7 slots which are undefined in the array, and the 10th index is again populated with the value we set. These kind of arrays are called sparse arrays. Alright. A typical array in other programming languages is a compact array. That is, we cannot leave empty slots in between. The array is always compact, that is, elements are adjacent to each other. But in JavaScript, arrays are sparse. We can have gaps between the elements of an array, and that is because JavaScript doesn't have an underlying array data structure, which may sound strange, but that's what it is. The underlying data structure that JavaScript uses for an array is an object. Let's see that next. As said earlier, JavaScript doesn't have an array as an inbuilt fundamental data structure. JavaScript uses objects as the underlying data structure, and all array indices are converted into strings. and then used as the property of that object. Alright? For example, in the array that we created earlier, we can access the element at the 0th index like this also. Here we use the numeric index value as a string and then access it as a property in the myArray object. If you recall, this was one of the ways of accessing property values in objects, right? So essentially, it's just an object and JavaScript provides a syntactic sugar to give it an array-like appearance. Another way to see that is to find the type of this variable. So let's see type of myArray. And JavaScript says it's an object. JavaScript provides another operator called the instance of operator, which can be used to check if a particular value is an instance of some specific type. So let's use this operator to check if myArray is an instance of object. JavaScript evaluates it to true because myArray is an object. Now we can also check if myArray is an instance of array with capital A. And it also happens to be an instance of array. And what is this array? Well, let's just type array and see what JavaScript evaluates it to. Array turns out to be a function. Wow, how can it be a function? Well, we will look at this aspect of JavaScript in later chapters. For now, just understand that array is implemented as objects. Let's add another item to our array, but this time we will do it by using the object notation. So let's add an item at index 5. So we say myArray, within square brackets, we write the property 5, which is the number 5 as a string. And then we assign it some value, say the string ABC. Alright. Now let's evaluate this array. And as you can see, we have the string ABC at the 5th index. Array objects have a property called length, which is meant to tell us the size of the array. But that is not exactly true. And this is another thing that you must be aware of with regards to arrays in JavaScript, otherwise you may add some bug in your code. Let's declare a new array, let's call it XYZ, and initialize it with an array object containing two elements 1 and 2. Let's see what the length of this array is. And of course the length is 2. Let's add another element at the next index, which is index 2. And now if we check the length of this array, of course we should get a 3. Now comes the interesting part. Let's add an element at index 10. What should be the length of this array now? Ideally it should be 4 because we added 4 elements to it. But if you print it out, you can see that the length is now 11, which is one more than the largest integer index in the array where an element is set. Also, length is not a function. It is a property in the array object. So we don't call it by putting brackets. We just read it as a property. You can use the dot notation as shown or even the index notation for reading the value of the length property. So when you are dealing with arrays, be careful when using the length property. It may not give what you want, and you may have to write another function to calculate the length of the array by iterating over the elements of the array. We will see that in the next lecture, but before that, there is another interesting behavior of the array object. What if we set the length property of the array? Let's say we have these 11 elements in the array XYZ, and we have elements at the first 3 indices of the array and the 10th index of the array. And now we say xyz.length is equal to 2. After all, length is just a property in the object. If we do that, the array shrinks such that we only have 2 elements in the array, starting from the 0th index. Alright. So if we print the array on the console, you can see we now have only the first 2 elements left. The other elements were removed from the. Now let's see how to go over each element of the array. There are two ways we can do that. Let's create an array for this example. Let me create this array with 3 elements at the beginning of the array and another element at the 10th index, so that we have an sparse array with gaps in between. The first way is the regular for loop, which accesses each element through their numeric index. So we can say for where I is equal to 0, I less than my array dot length, I plus plus, then open and close braces, and inside this we can access each element through the index I. So we can access them as my array with subscript I. Alright. As mentioned earlier, some elements of the array may be undefined. So we should ideally check if the value is not undefined and then read the element at that index. Okay. There is another interesting way to access each element, and that is by using the for in loop. If you recall, we have talked about this loop in the section on how to access each property value in an object. And because arrays are objects, we can use the for in loop to access each element. By the way, for arrays it is not the recommended way, and you will see why. But nonetheless, it is interesting to know how can this be used. We can say for where I in my array, then within braces we can write our statements. For now, let's just print the value of I. And here this I will be the available indices in the array. And as you can see, it prints out only those indices for which the element is set. All the other indices are ignored because, as said earlier, this for in loop actually goes over the properties of the array object. Now, this way of looping through the array is not recommended because there are cases where a JavaScript library may add a property to this array. And apart from the indices, you will also get that property, which is not really correct. One check that you may put to avoid this problem is to use the has own property method of the objects. Which checks if a particular property really belongs to that object or it has been inherited from another object. We will talk more about it in the chapter on object-oriented programming, so don't worry too much about it right now. Just know the pitfalls of using this kind of iteration. To access the element itself, we can use the index as an array subscript. Sometimes we would like to delete elements from an array. Just like we remove properties from an object using the delete keyword, we can do the same in an array, because arrays, after all, are objects with array indices as properties of those objects. So if we want to delete the element at the first index, we can say delete my array passing an index value of 1. Alright. Now let's see what the array contains. The length of the array hasn't changed here, or the array has not been shrinked, if that's what you expected or wanted to happen. If you recall, from deleting a property in an object, JavaScript just sets it to undefined. That is, the property is kind of removed from the object. Similarly here, the property related to index 1 has been removed from the array, which is as good as saying that there is no element at index 1. But it has not been deleted in the sense that would shrink the array appropriately and reduce the length of the array by 1. If that's what you wanted to do, you should use the splice method provided by JavaScript. We will look at some of such methods in the array object provided by JavaScript in the next lecture. Let's look at some useful methods available with the array objects in JavaScript. Some of these methods are concat, join, push and pop, slice, splice, and sort. So let's start with the concat method. The concat method, as the name suggests, is used for joining two or more arrays into a single array. For example, if we have these two arrays named A and B, if we say a.concat and pass B as an argument, the resulting array will be this. Alright? By the way, the original arrays remain intact. The method returns a new array such that the resulting array contains all the elements of A followed by all the elements of B. Alright? Let's try it on the console. Let's create two arrays first. The first one has elements 1, 3 and 5. And the second array has elements 2, 4 and 6. Alright. Now let's do a.concat and pass B as an argument. And the resulting array has the elements 1, 3, 5, 2, 4, 6. Alright. Notice that the original arrays A and B are unchanged. The concat method created a new array and returned it. If we want to keep it for future use, we must keep the result in a variable, alright? Let's create another array C with elements 10, 11 and 12. This is to show that we can concatenate multiple arrays at the same time. So now we can do a.concat and pass B and C as arguments separated by a comma. This concatenates arrays B and C to the array A. It is as good as saying a.concat B.concat C. That is, we can chain the method calls because each of these calls returns a new array. Of course, the earlier version of concatenating more than one arrays should be used because that should be a little more efficient, saving the cost of intermediate array creation and function calls. Alright, so now let's get to the next method, join. From the name, it seems like it would be doing something similar to the concat method. But actually it's quite different from that. The join method works over an array and gives a string representation of that array. Let's join the elements of array A. And as you can see, we get a string which contains all the elements of the array separated by commas. Comma is the default separator when we join an array. But we can optionally pass another separator string to the join method. So let's say we want to separate each method by a pipe. We can do it like so. Let's see the next method, push, which adds a new element at the end of the array. And it returns the new length of the array. So if we push 7 into the array A, the new length is returned, which is 4. And if we see the contents of A, this is how it looks like. 7 added to the end. Similar to the push method, we have the unshift method, which can add an element at the start of the array. So let's unshift 9 to this array A. And if we print this array, you can see that 9 is added at the start of the array. After adding items, let's see how to remove and get the first and last elements of an array. We use pop to get the last item of the array. And this item is also removed from the array, decreasing the length of the array. This method removes the last item and returns it. The push and pop methods are quite similar to the push and pop methods of a stack data structure. So in JavaScript, you can just use an array as a stack without having to do any other additional thing. Just like the pop method, we have the shift method, which removes and returns the item from the start of the array. Let's look at the slice and splice methods now. The slice method returns the selected elements in an array as a new array object without affecting the original array. The slice method takes two arguments, start and end, Start is the start index from where to slice the array up to the end index, not including the end index. So here if we say slice from 1 to 4, then the new array will contain elements at index 1, 2 and 3 from the old array. Alright. Also the end argument is optional. And if we pass only one argument, that is the start index, and the array will be spliced from this start index to the end of the array. That is all the elements of the array after the start index, including the one at the start index. Okay. The splice method is one which changes the original array it is acting upon, unlike the others we have seen. It adds, removes items to or from an array and returns the removed items. Let's say we have this array of some letters from the Greek alphabet, and we want to remove elements from the second index onwards. So we can say Greek.splice and pass 2 as an argument, which is the index of the array from where the elements are to be removed. As you can see, this method call has returned the elements that were removed from the original array, and the original array contains only the first two elements. This time all the elements from the start index to the last were removed, but we can control how many elements are to be removed. So apart from the start index, we can pass the optional how many parameter, which says after the start index how many items are to be removed. So let's try this on the console. Let's start with the original array, but now starting from the second index, let's remove 3 elements. And now our original array is this, while the removed elements are returned by the splice method. There is one more thing that we can do with the splice method. We can use it to replace elements of an array. Let's start with the original array, and then we replace 3 elements from index 4 with these 2 elements, which we have passed as a comma separated list of arguments after the how many argument. Alright. So now if you look at this array, we see these 3 elements are replaced with the 2 elements that we have passed. You can pass any number of elements here. This method takes a variable argument list. In this last lecture for this chapter, let's see how to sort items in an array. Let's first create an array of numbers with some random elements. Now let's sort this array by calling the sort method. And the result is not what we expect. Well, by default, JavaScript sorts by ascending order of the alphabet, or in the lexicographical or dictionary order. So alphabetically speaking, we get this order: 2, then 34, then 5, then 6, and then 67, and then 8. Because this is how numbers would have appeared had they been a part of a dictionary, right? So this is a default behavior. But what if we want to sort numbers as regular numbers? Well, we can tell JavaScript how to sort by passing a comparator function which takes 2 items as a parameter. If this comparator returns a negative number, then the first argument is considered to be less than the second, and the elements are not swapped because they are already in order. If it returns 0, then both arguments are considered to be equal. Or if the function returns a positive number, then the first argument is considered to be greater than the second argument, and the 2 elements would be exchanged in the array. Let's use it in our example of sorting these numbers. So let's write a function and call it numComparator, which takes 2 parameters. Let's name them a and b. So if we return a minus b, it will return a positive value if a is greater than b, which means that the exchange of elements will happen. If a is less than b, then the expression a minus b evaluates to a negative value, in which case no exchange happens. So with this function, we should see the sorting done in ascending order of numbers. Alright, so let's pass this function itself to the sort function. And note that we are not invoking the function. So there is no use of parenthesis. We are just passing the function object itself. You will see this in detail later when we talk about functional programming. So let's run it. And indeed the numbers are sorted in ascending order. If we wanted to sort them in descending order, what should we do? Well, we want the exchange to happen if a is less than b, so we should return a positive value if a is less than b. Hence we can return b minus a in the function. Note that the sorting algorithm only checks if the number returned from the comparator function is positive, negative or 0. It doesn't need to worry about what number is returned, alright? Internally, the sort function would use some variation of quicksort or merge sort algorithm depending on the data type of the array elements. There is no need to get into that in this course. If you had your own custom types instead of numbers, you can just write a comparator function which will tell the sort method how to compare two elements in the array, so that it can be used to sort the array. And with the idea of passing of a function, you probably got some hint into functional programming, and that is what we will learn in the next chapter.